Today we'll be working on a snowblower. It is a yard machine, 22-inch, I believe. We can't get it to start. We couldn't get it to start last year. This year we've got to do a little bit more snow pushing, so we're trying to get it running. I think it needs a carburetor rebuild. The primer knob over here is completely dry rotted, so I know we're going to have to replace that. So today's video, we're going to be tearing it apart and showing you how to rebuild the carburetor, put it back together. Hopefully we can get it running. I will show you the problem we're having. Right here, the primer knob's completely torn away. So I'm just going to try to start it a couple times, see if we can get it, fired up, see if it'll stall out. So we got nothing. Okay, the first thing we want to do is check for spark. Alright, right here is our spark plug wire. We're just going to pull that off. Okay, and then we're just going to see if we can ground it just on the block, on a piece of metal. We got the key turned on. This right here, can't really see it from that clip, but so we're looking for spark. We want to see if we see spark coming out. We don't really see it, so we'll try to readjust this, see if we can get it to connect on that bolt. Okay, I'm not seeing spark. So we want to check a little bit further into the sparking problem, because it may not even be fuel, it may be spark. Okay, so I'm going to pull the spark plug out. Alright, now I'm just going to take the spark plug and I'm going to put it down inside the chamber, and I'm just going to set this against some metal wherever I can get it to position, and then I'm just going to kind of check to see if we can get it to spark. Let me grab a bungee cord real quick. Actually, that looks like that might stay right there. So I'm just going to look to see if it sparks. Okay, I can see the spark. It's a very, very weak spark, so we're going to replace the spark plug. But I am getting ignition, so next thing we need to check for is fuel. Alright, another thing I noticed when I was actually pulling the ignition coil right down here where the spark plug goes, where that little spot is, I could smell a really, really foul smell like varnish. And that tells me that it's probably gummed up. So when I pull it, and then I take a nice whiff, I can smell the varnishy type of fuel. That's it's already turned bad, so we definitely got to pull the carburetor. Alright, I need to remove this heat shield. The muffler's right underneath here, so I need to remove this, and the carburetor sits right down here, right next to the camshaft. Okay, so we're going to pull this off and access this. We have two 10mm over here. Alright, now we have two more over here. Got one right here and one right here. Now this one's going to be a little bit tough to get to. Alright, we need to remove this shield right here. It's got a standard screwdriver, or you could use an 8mm, the hex bolt. I'm just going to pull this off, and then we can access the belt from here as well if you guys need to service the belt. Okay, so then this just has a little clip in there. Okay, now it just pops up. Bring it over the other side. Now over here on the other side, we just got to push this in right here. Got a little clip right there. Then we can move that out of the way. Now that we removed that plastic shield, got a 10mm, we can release this bolt. Alright, in that last clip, I couldn't get this bolt to break loose, so I grabbed my torch and I heated up the bolt a little bit. So I was able to break it loose. Okay, so if that happens to you, just use a little bit of heat. You could use a little butane propane torch like this, or you could use a propane torch like that. This one's a butane torch. This one is a propane torch. Okay, the yellow one's just a little bit hotter. So now I can get this bolt out, so I can get the rest of this shield off. Alright, we have a little clip over here. You just put your little screwdriver in there and pry that clip open, and it'll release this. so that you can pull the plastic housing off so you can pull that handle out, okay? The reason you gotta do that is because this has to slide out that way, and with a shoot-in you can't do that. Now we need to remove these pins, okay? So this one, just want to get behind here with some sort of a hook tool, okay? And then just tug on it, get some firm pressure, and it should just pull off. Okay, same thing with your choke knob. Just want to put some pressure behind it, and it pops off. Okay, now this, just the key, this pulls right out. You don't have to worry about the primer knob. Now what we need to do first, we want to get this plastic shroud off. So we got to remove this Phillips screw. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to remove these two 10mm bolts. I have two 10mm in the top. All right, we have this little tube right here. I just pulled the C-clip back. Okay, we just need to pull that tube off. It's a crankcase ventilation tube. Okay, that should free up the top end. All right, as I got into this, I discovered I needed to remove the wheel on this side and remove the two bolts, 2.5-inch bolts that hold this bracket on. And I did the same thing on this side. Now the reason I had to do that is because I couldn't get this off without moving this out of the way. Then I had to make sure I disconnected this hose that goes into the top of the, right here. So I disconnect that. Now the carburetor, its two mounting bolts are right here. So once you remove that, the whole carburetor is free floating there. So now we'll disconnect all the hardware here. Now the first thing that I want to disconnect is the primer knob, because I know we need to replace this. So all I have to do is just squeeze that little clamp. Okay, pull that hose up, and then these little clips that hold it in are just little push buttons. So I'm just going to squeeze those in. So now that I got that off, I'm going to slide this back just a little bit more. Just kind of twist and hold the tube, and then that pulls off. Okay, so this is what's bad. You can see how it's completely split. Now if that's split, that's allowing air to get down inside here, which is turning that fuel into varnish. All right, so now this is pretty much out of the way. Okay, so we can actually leave it laying here. Okay, now we want to drain the gas. Okay, so the whole carburetor is pretty much loose, but I want to get the gas off. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to disconnect it right at the carburetor so that I have this extra tube so that I can pour it right into this bucket. What I want to do is I want to remove this plate. Now this plate goes right here. Now I can already feel like this is already sticky and gummy, so I know that this carburetor is gummed up. So I'm going to pull this off. Okay, there's a little rod in there. I just want to go up with it, and then that'll come out. Now I can access my fuel line, which is right here. Now I'm just going to remove the fuel line. Grab some pliers, push that back. I'm just going to take a flat screwdriver, get behind it, just kind of push it back. And I want to try to catch it in this bucket. I don't want to make a big mess. There we go. I'll let that drain for a few minutes. Now we got to take off the governor control, but we've got to remove this plate. So you have an 8mm right here, which I had to grind a little bit of that tab off so I could get this wrench in there. And then you have another 8mm here. You got to remove this plate, and then what we're going to do is we're going to mark right where that wire is, where the spring is. We're going to mark it right there. It's in the middle so that we know where to put it back together. And then there's another bar right behind here that goes over to the governor control. All right, now we're just going to mark where that spring is, and we're going to mark where this one is and where this one is. It's obvious where they're at, but just so that they get put back in the right spot. We're going to pull that spring out. All right, now I just put some vice grips on this stud so I can get it out, because I can't slide the carburetor back far enough. These Chinese made engines are not very friendly, but we'll get her running. So I'm going to pull this stud all the way out. Now this one's a little bit shorter than the other one, so just kind of keep that a note. Pull this out as well. Then we can release those rods. So I just couldn't slide it back far enough without taking out these studs. So we want to be careful we don't damage the gasket back here. So we're going to try to, because parts are really hard to find for these Chinese engines. So we're just going to try to keep that. What I might do is just keep this rod in there so I know which one's which, okay? Then from there, I'll just release this spring to the governor. Okay, and then this one, I'm gonna just pull straight up. So then there's our carburetor. All right, this took me about an hour to remove the carburetor. Here's the inlet into the head. There's where the spark plug goes. Here is our carburetor that we're gonna put over on the bench and rebuild it, and we'll make this on the video 2, the rebuild of this carburetor. And it smells awful. It smells nothing like gasoline. This thing's completely stuck. I can't even get it to move. So this, I should be able to move this, but because it's varnished up, we're gonna have to rebuild this. All right, what we're gonna do before we rebuild this, we're gonna take off this bottom 10mm, and they're gonna take off the bolt, okay? And then I'm gonna let it soak overnight in gasoline, just to kind of help break it up. So you see it's not actually too bad in here, but it definitely has some fresh gas in it. I can smell it. But we're going to pull this pin. We're going to pull out the float. The float looks fine. Okay. We're going to pull out these 2 jets. I think our problem is this right here is clogged. Because see how I can barely move it. See how sticky it is? Okay. So I'm thinking that's probably our problem. So we'll go through and clean this up. My first step, I'm going to come in here, remove the primary jet. Okay, and a little check ball. This is the lock nut. This is the actual jet itself. Then I'm just going to let this soak overnight in some gasoline. And I'll come back tomorrow and we'll rebuild it. All right, we're going to start to assemble this. This is our main jet. And this is only going to go in one way, so it needs to go in with this short shaft going down, okay? And we got to wiggle it just a little bit, and then we're going to take the lock nut. Now this was completely corroded, and I couldn't even breathe through this. You couldn't see anything through it. But since we cleaned it out, let it soak, we can go ahead and put it back together, and then just cinch that down until it bottoms out, and then one little turn, okay? Then from here, what we're going to install now is the float and the check valve. So the float just goes down right in there. Okay, and then we're going to put the pin in next. Just kind of wiggle it until it goes in, and then it's pretty much like that. Now there's really no adjustment on this. It's a plastic float, so you can't really adjust it, so it's only one way. But if you look, when you come up with it, it moves that check valve and it shuts off. Okay, then the next thing we're going to install is the bowl. Okay, it goes in just like that, and then the nut goes right over the top of that. And if you put that check valve, the main jet, if you put that in incorrectly or backwards, you won't be able to put this bolt all the way in. So if you find that you can't tighten this bolt down, you need to flip the jet because you have it installed incorrect. Okay, so that's pretty much all there is to doing this carburetor rebuild. We're going to put it back together in the snow thrower and give it a shot, replace the spark plug, and we'll come back in a few minutes. All right, we got it all back together. Let's see how we did. When I fixed the primer knob, I just put some silicone around it, put it on choke. Turn the key on. The key just in and out, that's on. Turn it up to turtle. Alright, good to go. Alright, there you have it. Works good. Test run in the snow. Throws just fine. Came in not running. It's going out. Works perfectly. Just a little rebuild on the carburetor. We didn't need any parts, just labor. Took me about 2.5 hours to do it, but got 1.5 feet of snow, so we're going to put it to work.